A police dog refused to let a pilot board his own plane, causing delays and passenger outrage. But when security finally checked beneath the cockpit seat, what they discovered sent everyone running for their lives. Here's what happened. But before we get into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. And if you love extraordinary police dog stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow across Terminal 3 of O'Hare International Airport as Officer Michael Reeves adjusted his winter patrol jacket, his breath visible in the January chill seeping through the automatic doors beside him. Titan, his German Shepherd partner of 3 years, maintained perfect heel position, his dark eyes scanning the steady stream of travelers with practiced intensity. The morning rush was in full swing, with passengers hurrying to their gates through the snowstorm that had blanketed Chicago overnight. Weather delays had created a tense atmosphere, with anxious travelers checking departure boards and flight crews rushing to minimize further disruptions. Just another day in paradise, huh, boy? Reeves murmured, reaching down to scratch behind Titan's ear. The shepherd leaned into his touch briefly before resuming his vigilant posture. Reeves smiled, remembering how his colleagues had nicknamed Titan the Professor for his almost unnerving ability to analyze situations. The dog never barked without reason, a quality that had made them one of the airport's most respected security teams. They continued their sweep through the international terminal, Titan moving with fluid grace between bags and passengers. Every few minutes, he would glance up at Reeves, their years of partnership evident in the subtle communication between them. They had just passed the premium airline lounges when Titan's behavior shifted dramatically, a change so sudden that Reeves immediately took notice. The shepherd's ears pricked forward, his body tensing as his focus locked onto a pilot walking confidently through the crew security lane. Captain James Harrington, according to his visible ID badge, was heading toward the flight deck preparation area, his flight bag slung over one shoulder. Nothing about him appeared unusual. His uniform was immaculate, his manner professional, as he nodded to security personnel. But Titan's posture transformed from routine patrol to rigid alertness. A low growl rumbled in his throat, escalating rapidly to determined barking as he pulled Reeves toward the pilot. "Titan, heel," Reeves commanded. But for the first time in their partnership, Titan ignored the order. The shepherd lunged forward, positioning himself directly in the pilot's path, his barking now drawing startled looks from everyone in the vicinity. When Captain Harrington attempted to step around him, Titan matched his movements, physically blocking him from proceeding farther. "Control your dog, officer," Harrington snapped, his face flushing with anger as passengers began to stare. "I have a transatlantic flight departing in 40 minutes. "I apologize for the inconvenience, Captain," Reeves said, keeping his voice measured while maintaining his grip on Titan's leash. "But my partner doesn't react this way without cause." Harrington's jaw tightened. "Well, your partner is mistaken. I've been flying for American Airlines for 15 years. I don't have time for this." Airport Security Supervisor Diane Coleman approached, her expression a careful mask of professionalism despite the scene unfolding in the busy terminal. "What's the situation, Reeves?" she asked quietly. "Titan's alerting strongly to the captain here," Reeves explained, noting that Titan's attention remained unwaveringly fixed on Harrington. "I've never seen him react as intensely to airline personnel." "This is ridiculous," Harrington interjected, checking his watch. "Flight 8862 to London has already been delayed due to the snowstorm. I have 243 passengers waiting to board." Coleman glanced between the barking shepherd and the increasingly agitated pilot. "Officer Reeves, you know we can't delay a flight because your dog is having an episode." Reeves felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. 3 years of working with Titan had taught him to trust the dog's instincts implicitly. Titan hadn't been wrong yet, not when he detected that concealed weapon last year, not when he found a drug smuggler with surgical implants 2 months ago. "I'm requesting a secondary screening for Captain Harrington," Reeves stated firmly. "Protocol allows for random additional security checks of all personnel, including flight crew." "This isn't random," Harrington snapped, his face growing redder. "It's harassment. I'm calling the Airline Operations Center." As the pilot reached for his phone, Reeves noticed something that strengthened his resolve. A slight tremor in Harrington's hand, a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there moments before. Fear, possibly, or anger at being delayed. Either way, it wasn't the typical reaction of innocent airline employees who occasionally underwent random screening. "Sir, please come with us for a quick additional check," Coleman said, making her decision. "We'll expedite the process to minimize delay to your flight." "This is outrageous," Harrington protested. But Reeves noticed how the pilot's eyes darted toward the nearest exit. "Captain, this can be handled quietly, or we can make it official," Coleman warned. "Your choice." Harrington's shoulders slumped slightly. "Fine, but the airline will hear about this." As they escorted the pilot toward the private screening room, Reeves leaned down to Titan, who had calmed slightly but remained alert. "Good boy," he whispered. "I trust you." Over his shoulder, Reeves caught a glimpse of the departure board. Flight 862 to London Heathrow, delayed. He just hoped he wasn't about to make the biggest mistake of his career or prevent the biggest disaster. The private screening room was austere. White walls, a metal table, and 4 chairs under unforgiving fluorescent lights. Titan sat alertly by the door as TSA Officer Marcus Wong methodically examined Captain Harrington's credentials. "Everything appears in order," Wong stated, comparing the pilot's license and ID against a database. Captain James Harrington, 15 years with American Airlines, current on all certifications and clearances. Harrington sat stiffly, arms crossed. "As I said, now can I please get to my aircraft? The flight plan has already been filed, and we're burning fuel on the tarmac." Reeves observed silently as Wong opened Harrington's flight bag. Standard items emerged: flight manual, navigation charts, spare epaulets, reading glasses, an energy bar, and a travel-sized toiletry kit. Nothing unusual. "Sir, would you mind removing your jacket?" Wong asked, his tone professional. Harrington complied with visible irritation, placing his uniform jacket on the table. "This is beyond procedure, even for random screening." Wong carefully examined the jacket, checking each pocket and seam, while Reeves watched Titan. The dog's attention hadn't wavered. His eyes remained fixed on the pilot, following his every movement. "Checking with operations," Coleman said, stepping back into room after using her radio. "They're positioning a backup pilot, just in case. But they need a decision within 15 minutes. Pressure mounted in the small room. Reeves felt doubt creeping in. Despite his trust in Titan, the evidence, or lack thereof, was making him question his decision. "Look," Harrington said, his tone softening, "I understand you're doing your job. Maybe your dog smelled my cat on my clothes. I had to give her medication this morning before leaving." The explanation was plausible. K9S occasionally alerted animal scents, especially medications with chemical compounds similar to contraband. Wong completed his inspection, finding nothing. "Everything checks out," he concluded. Coleman sighed with relief. "I think we can clear Captain Harrington. We'll note the incident and—" Titan suddenly barked sharply, rising to his feet. Reeves had worked with him long enough to recognize this wasn't just persistence. This was escalation. The dog was telling them they were missing something. "Sir," Reeves said carefully, "would you mind emptying your pants pockets as well?" Harrington's expression flickered. "So briefly most would miss it. Fine." He pulled out a wallet, keys, a phone, and some loose change, placing them on the table. "No." Wong examined each item, focusing particularly on the phone. Standard iPhone, no modifications visible. Satisfied, Harrington asked, reaching for his belongings. As his sleeve pulled back, Reeves noticed a thin sheen of sweat on the pilot's wrist. Despite the room's cool temp, the man's breathing had also subtly accelerated. "Actually," Reeves said, "I'd like to request a full-body scan and an ion detector swab." Harrington froze. "That's not standard procedure for flight crew. It is when there's reasonable suspicion," Coleman replied, her earlier skepticism fading as she too noticed the pilot's changing demeanor. "I need to make a call to my union representative," Harrington insisted. Coleman nodded to Wong, who stepped forward. "Your phone will need to remain here during the additional screening. Captain. The atmosphere in the room had transformed. What began as an apparent false alarm now felt like the beginning of something far more serious. As they prepared to move Harrington to the advanced screening area, Titan's behavior evolved again. The shepherd pulled toward the uniform jacket still lying on the table, his focus narrowing with laser precision. "He's trying to tell us something specific," Reeves said, allowing Titan to approach the jacket. The dog sniffed methodically along the garment, then paused at the collar area, pawing gently but insistently at the left lapel. Harrington shifted uncomfortably. "This is absurd. That's a standard uniform issued by the airline." Reeves remembered a case from 6 months earlier. A smuggler had sewn contraband into clothing seams, undetectable through standard pat-downs. Titan had found it then, too. "I'd like to examine this more closely," Reeves said, picking up the jacket. He ran his fingers carefully along the collar and lapel where Titan had indicated. Though nothing felt immediately obvious, he noticed the stitching on the left side appeared slightly different, almost imperceptibly tighter. "We need the portable imaging equipment," he told Coleman. "The kind they use for suspected electronic concealments." "You're ripping apart my uniform based on a dog behavior?" Harrington protested, his voice rising. "This is custom tailored, worth over $3,000. Coleman hesitated, then made the call. "If nothing's found, the department will compensate for any damage," she assured the pilot. As they waited for the equipment, Reeves reflected on Titan's history. The shepherd had once detected a memory card hidden inside a hollowed-out pen that contained crucial evidence in a human trafficking case. Another time, he alerted to explosive residue so minimal that even the laboratory had initially missed it. "I've worked with K9 units for 12 years, Reeves explained to Coleman. "Titan doesn't make mistakes. His detection rate is nearly perfect." The imaging technician arrived with a portable X-ray device, carefully scanning the jacket, while they all watched the attached monitor. For several moments, nothing appeared unusual. Then, as the scanner passed over the left lapel, something showed up, a thin, flat object embedded within the fabric, nearly invisible to the naked eye. "What is that?" Coleman asked, peering at the screen. The technician adjusted the settings, enhancing the image. "It looks like some kind of microchip or a thin electronic component." All eyes turned to Harrington, whose face had drained of color. "Captain," Coleman said, her voice now hard, "care to explain what's hidden in your uniform?" Harrington's composure cracked. "I want a lawyer." Reeves knelt beside Titan, who had finally relaxed, his mission accomplished. "Good boy," he whispered. "You were right all along." Michael Reeves hadn't always trusted dogs the way he trusted Titan. Growing up in South Chicago, he'd been bitten by a neighbor's Rottweiler at age 8, an experience that left him wary of canines for years. By the time he joined the Chicago Police Department at 23, he'd overcome most of his apprehension, but still never imagined he'd become a K9 handler. That changed during his 4th year on the force, when he witnessed K9 Officer Patrice Williams and her Belgian Malinois, Rex, track a kidnapping suspect through an industrial park to rescue a 6-year-old child. The precision, the partnership, the silent communication between handler and dog. It struck something deep within him. 3 months later, Reeves applied for the K9 unit. His supervisor had been surprised. Reeves had built a solid reputation in cybercrime investigation, not field operations. But something about the bond between handler and dog called to him. "You sure about this, Mike?" his sergeant had asked. "K9 work isn't just a job. It's a lifestyle. That dog goes home with you, lives with you, depends on you." "I'm sure," Reeves had answered, more confidently than he felt. The Homeland Security K9 Training Center in Texas had paired him with Titan, then a 2-year-old shepherd who'd washed out of 2 previous training attempts. Not for lack of ability, but for what instructors called excessive analytical behavior. Most detection dogs alert immediately when they find a target scent, head trainer Martinez had explained. Titan stops, processes, verifies, and alerts. Makes him slower in certification tests, but potentially more accurate in complex environments. Their first weeks together had been challenging. Reeves, still learning handler techniques, would grow frustrated when Titan would pause during detection exercises. Seemingly distracted, The breakthrough came during a training scenario when Titan ignored the planet explosive material and instead alerted to an airport worker's bag that hadn't been part of the exercise. Security found prescription medications the worker had forgotten to declare, medications containing chemical compounds that could be used in improvised explosives. He wasn't wrong. Martinez had said, impressed. He was being thorough. After that, Reeves adjusted his approach, giving Titan the time he needed to process sense. Their certification scores improved dramatically. When they were assigned to O'Hare's International Terminal, they quickly established themselves as the team that found what others missed. Their most significant case had come 8 months ago, when Titan alerted to a diplomatic pouch, technically outside their jurisdiction to search. Reeves had trusted his partner enough to delay the diplomatic courier, creating an international incident that was only resolved when the subsequent investigation revealed counterfeit diplomatic credentials and smuggled biological samples. That case had earned them commendations and a reputation for being willing to follow Titan's nose regardless of politics or pressure. Trust the dog had become Reeves's personal mantra. When in doubt, when under pressure, when facing skepticism from superiors. Those 3 words centered him, and Titan had never let him down. Even now, as the investigation into Captain Harrington intensified, Reeves clung to that certainty. Amidst the growing tension around them, the specialized TSA technical team worked with methodical precision, carefully cutting through the stitching of Captain Harrington's uniform lapel under the bright examination lights. Harrington sat handcuffed to a chair in the corner, silent since requesting legal representation 15 minutes earlier. Careful, cautioned senior technician Sophia Lynn as her colleague extracted a paper-thin electronic component from within the fabric. Don't damage it. The room fell silent as Lynn placed the item in a specialized evidence container, approximately the size of a postage stamp, but thinner than a credit card. The device had copper traces visible across its surface and a miniature power source. Initial assessment? Coleman asked. Lynn examined it through a magnifying lens. It's some kind of custom electronic component, not commercial, possibly a triggering mechanism or remote activation device. Reeves felt his pulse quicken. For what? That's what we need to find out, Lynn replied, connecting container to a specialized scanner. But whatever it is, your dog prevented it from getting onto that aircraft. FBI Special Agent Victor Ramirez entered the room, having been called as soon as the device was discovered. Captain James Harrington, he read from a tablet, or should I say, James Harrington Kaiser. The pilot's head snapped up, his eyes widening. Facial recognition just matched you to a person of interest who disappeared from Interpol monitoring in Frankfurt 3 years ago, Ramirez continued. Your work with certain extremist groups made quite an impression, Harrington or Kaiser. Suddenly, Harrington lunged toward the door. Despite being handcuffed to the chair, his desperate movement carried both him and the furniture several feet before 2 officers tackled him to the ground. During the struggle, he managed to bite down hard on something in his mouth. Suicide pill. Ramirez shouted, "Get medical in here, now." The next minutes were chaos as medical personnel rushed in, forcing the man's jaw open and extracting a partially dissolved capsule. He was quickly strapped to a gurney and rushed toward the airport's medical center. He won't die, the paramedic assured them. Got most of it out in time, but he'll be unconscious for a while. After the commotion settled, Lynn's analysis continued with renewed urgency. It's definitely a custom activation trigger, she confirmed, pointing to her screen. Designed to interface with something else, something not present in his belongings. Ramirez turned to Reeves. We need to search the aircraft immediately. American Airlines Flight 862 had been fully boarded by the time the emergency evacuation order went through. Passengers filed out onto the snowy tarmac, confusion and frustration evident on their faces as they were escorted back to a secure area of the terminal. The specialized explosive detection team swept the Boeing 777 from nose to tail, focusing particularly on the flight deck where Harrington would have been stationed. Titan worked alongside the bomb-sniffing dogs, his behavior different now, methodical, precise. Each section carefully examined before moving on. In the co-pilot seat beneath the standard cushion, Titan alerted the technical team. They carefully removed the cushion to reveal what appeared to be a normal part of the seat's mechanical structure, except it wasn't. Concealed within the adjustment mechanism was another electronic device, this one larger and more complex. A remote-triggered explosive device. Confirmed, the bomb technician said after scanning it. Sophisticated, low metal content. Wouldn't have been detected by standard pre-flight checks. How bad? Reeves asked quietly. The technician's expression was grim. Positioned here, it would have breached the cockpit floor and damaged critical flight systems. Catastrophic, midair over the Atlantic. Ramirez's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to the group. The pilot's awake and he's talking. Captain James Harrington Kaiser sat propped up in a hospital bed, his wrists secured to the rails. His face was ashen under the harsh medical lighting. Two FBI agents stood guard at the door as Reyes, Coleman, and Reeves entered the room. Titan had been left outside with another handler. Standard procedure for interrogations. The device has been found and neutralized, Ramirez stated without preamble. We know about the explosive in the cockpit. What we don't know is whether there are more. Kaiser's eyes flickered between them, calculating. The failed suicide attempt had left him physically weakened but mentally alert. I want immunity. You're facing federal terrorism charges for attempting to destroy an aircraft, Ramirez replied coldly. Immunity isn't on the table. Cooperation might keep you off death row. Silence stretched between them until Coleman stepped forward. 243 passengers, Captain, plus crew, children, families, people who trusted you with their lives. Something in her words seemed to reach him. His shoulders slumped slightly. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said finally. Originally, it was just information gathering. Intelligence work. Ramirez placed a recorder on the bedside table. Start from the beginning. The story that emerged was more complex than any of them had anticipated. Kaiser had indeed been a legitimate pilot for 15 years before being recruited by a sophisticated terrorist network during a layover in Istanbul. Initial assignments were simple, observing security protocols, noting vulnerability patterns, occasionally transporting encrypted data drives between international cells. The network called itself Ascension. Kaiser explained they weren't like other groups. They were patient, methodical. Some operations were planned years in advance. And this operation, phase 1 of 3, Kaiser replied. Simultaneous strikes against 3 transatlantic flights, demonstrating security vulnerabilities. Despite post 9/11 protocols. My flight was the first test case. The full operational details spilled forth. How Kaiser had been provided the specially designed explosives during a layover in Dubai 3 weeks earlier. How he'd installed them during routine maintenance periods when pilots often checked their assigned aircraft. The triggering devices in his uniform would have activated once the plane reached cruising altitude over the Atlantic. The other 2 pilots? Ramirez demanded. Kaiser nodded slowly. Frankfurt to New York, Paris to Chicago, departing within the next 48 hours. Coleman was already on her phone, coordinating with international authorities. There's more, Kaiser continued, his voice dropping. The Chicago apartment, Unit 512, at Lakeside Towers. The network maintains a safe house there. A team was dispatched immediately to the address. Within an hour, images began flooding into the secure tablets Ramirez carried. The apartment had been converted into a sophisticated operations center. Blueprints of major airports, security protocol documents, and most disturbingly, detailed specifications for the explosive devices. This goes beyond 3 planes, Ramirez realized, scrolling through the files. They're mapping the entire international aviation security system. Kaiser confirmed it with a nod. Ascension is playing a long game. The plane attacks were just proof of concept. The real target is a global air transportation infrastructure, identifying weaknesses, exploiting them systematically. Names! Ramirez demanded. We need the names of everyone involved. Kaiser provided what he knew, though as he explained, the network operated in isolated cells with limited cross-knowledge. His primary contact was known only as a coordinator, a woman he'd met just twice, both times in crowded international terminals, where surveillance was challenging. She'll be monitoring news reports, Kaiser warned. When my flight doesn't go down, she'll know something went wrong. They'll activate contingency plans. Which are? Reeves asked. I don't know the details, but there's a secondary operations center somewhere near the airport. Reeves thought of Titan's extraordinary detection abilities. The device in your uniform. What made it detectable to my dog? Kaiser looked genuinely confused. It shouldn't have been. The components were specifically designed to avoid chemical detection. Yet he knew. Reeves pressed. He singled you out immediately. The former pilot shook his head. Then your dog is either extraordinarily lucky or extraordinarily good, because these devices were tested against K-9 units in 3 countries. As they left the hospital room, Ramirez turned to Reeves. We need to find that secondary operations center fast. I know someone who can help, Reeves replied, glancing toward the exit where Titan waited. His posture alert despite the hours that had passed since their morning patrol had turned into something much more significant. Snow fell in thick flakes as the tactical team assembled in the airport maintenance area. Their breath formed clouds in the freezing air. Reeves checked Titan protective vests one more time before securing the specialized booties designed to protect the dog's paws from sharp objects and chemical hazards. The maintenance facility has 5 separate buildings, FBI Tactical Commander Wilson explained, pointing to the blueprint displayed on a tablet. Based on Kaiser's limited information and cell phone triangulation data from his known contacts, we believe Building C is our most likely target. Ramirez nodded. Our suspect, this coordinator, likely doesn't know we've identified the operation, but she'll be cautious when Kaiser's flight lands without incident. We may be walking into an evidence destruction situation, Coleman added. Reeves knelt beside Titan. Ready, boy, he whispered. The shepherd's alert posture was all the answer he needed. The approach was silent and coordinated. 3 teams would enter simultaneously from different access points, with Reeves and Titan joining the main entry team. As they neared Building C, a nondescript structure that housed electrical systems for runway lighting, Titan's behavior confirmed their intelligence. The shepherd's posture changed, his movements becoming more deliberate, nose working overtime. He's got something, Reeves whispered into his radio. The tactical team took position around the main entrance. On the 3 count, they breached the door, moving swiftly into the dimly lit interior. The front office appeared normal. Maintenance logs, shift schedules, equipment manuals organized on metal shelving units. But Titan wasn't interested in the office. He pulled Reeves toward a door marked Electrical Access Only, his urgency unmistakable. Behind the door, a staircase led down to a sublevel not shown on the airport's official blueprints. The team descended carefully, tactical lights illuminating the narrow passage. At the bottom, they found what appeared to be a standard maintenance room, except for the woman standing beside a laptop computer, her hand hovering over the keyboard. FBI, hands where we can see them, Ramirez shouted. Instead of complying, the woman pressed a key and reached for something in her jacket. The tactical team responded immediately, 2 officers tackling her, while others secured the room. Titan barked sharply, pulling Reeves toward a storage cabinet along the far wall. Check it, Wilson commanded. Inside the cabinet, they discovered what they had feared, more of the specialized explosive devices. At least 20 units, each one similar to what they found on the aircraft, but with different mounting configurations. She was initiating a data wipe, the technical specialist announced, examining the computer. But we caught it in time. The woman, identified later as Elena Vov, an unknown associate of several extremist groups, maintained her silence as she was handcuffed and led away. But the evidence spoke volumes. The room contained everything needed for a coordinated attack on multiple aircraft. Devices in various states of assembly, airline schedules, security rotation patterns, and most disturbingly, personnel files on dozens of potential flight crew recruits like Kaiser. This isn't just about today's flights, Ramirez realized, scrolling through the data. This is a long-term operation, years in the making. As the FBI evidence team documented the scene, Reeves took Titan each corner of the room, making sure nothing was missed. In the final area, behind a ventilation panel, the shepherd alerted again. Inside was a small hard drive, carefully hidden one final insurance policy. Wilson observed as they secured the drive. Outside, emergency vehicles lined the perimeter of the maintenance area, their lights painting the falling snow in alternating red and blue patterns. As word spread throughout the command center, the magnitude of what they had prevented began to sink in. It started with one pilot, Coleman said, watching as the last of the evidence was loaded for transport. If your dog hadn't stopped him. Reeves nodded, scratching Titan behind the ears. One flight becomes three. 3 successful attacks become a blueprint for dozens more. The shepherd looked up at him, snow collecting on his dark fur. Mission accomplished. 2 days later, Reeves stood in the airport's administrative conference room as Airport Director Marvichin addressed the assembled team. Titan sat at perfect attention beside him, freshly groomed and wearing his formal K-9 unit harness. Thanks to the exceptional work of Officer Reeves and his K-9 partner Titan, Chin stated, her voice solemn, coordinated with TSA, FBI, and airport security, a catastrophic terrorist plot was thwarted. Chun continued. International authorities have confirmed the successful detention of 2 additional pilots in Frankfurt and Paris, preventing what would have been a synchronized attack. Ramirez stepped forward, nodding to Reeves. The evidence recovered from the secondary operations center has led to the identification of 17 Ascension Network operatives across 8 countries. Arrests are ongoing. Reeves listened, one hand resting lightly on Titan's head. For the shepherd, it had been just another day of doing his job, using his extraordinary senses to protect the humans around him. He hadn't understood the significance of the pilot he'd stopped or the lives he'd saved. He had simply known something was wrong and had refused to back down until someone listened. Officer Reeves, Chun concluded, the Department of Homeland Security has requested that you and Titan provide training consultations for their aviation security division. Your methods, particularly your trust in your partner's instincts, even when standard protocols suggested otherwise, represent exactly the kind of adaptive security thinking we need. As the meeting concluded and congratulations were offered, Reeves knelt beside his partner. "Good boy, Titan," he whispered, pressing his forehead briefly against the shepherd's. "The best boy." Titan's tail wagged once, his dark eyes meeting Reeves with what almost seemed like understanding. Then his ears perked up, attention already shifting to the next task, the next patrol, the next threat that only he might detect. Together, they walked back toward Terminal 3, ready to continue their watch over the thousands of travelers who would never know how close they'd come to disaster or that their safety had been secured by an officer with paws who refused to let a pilot board his plane. Have you ever witnessed a working dog like Titan in action at an airport or public place? We'd love to hear about your experience in the comments below. Would you trust your pet's instincts about a person, even if you couldn't explain why? Many handlers say their K-9 partners can sense things humans miss completely. What's the most amazing animal story you've heard about an animal preventing a disaster or saving lives? Share your stories. We read every comment and might feature your story in an upcoming video. What other K-9 heroes would you like to learn about in future videos? Let us know what interests you most. If the story of Titan's incredible save at O'Hare International Airport impressed you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another amazing K-9 hero story on our channel. Turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon to be the first to know when we upload new content every Tuesday and Friday. The bond between handlers and their K-9 partners represents one of the most remarkable partnerships in law enforcement, where trust, training, and instinct come together to protect the public from threats most of us never even notice. Drop a like on this video if you believe these brave K-9s deserve more recognition for their life-saving work. Your support helps us continue bringing these incredible stories to light. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the amazing capabilities of working dogs. Together, we can spread awareness about these four-legged heroes who serve alongside their human partners. Check out our previous K-9 stories appearing on your screen now, including the amazing story of Rex, who tracked a kidnapper through a blizzard, and Luna, who discovered a hidden human trafficking operation at a border checkpoint. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes walk on 4 legs. We'll see you in the next video.